Hello and welcome to a very special episode of To The Point, brought to you in conjunction with the Ananta Aspen Centre. Today, for the first time on Indian television, we present 3 former Pakistani High Commissioners to India and 3 former Indian High Commissioners to Pakistan to discuss the single key question: what is the state of the relationship between India and Pakistan? From the Pakistani side, we have former Foreign Secretary and former High Commissioner to India, Salman Bashir, former Ambassador to America, Russia, China, and former High Commissioner to India, Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, and former Ambassador to Afghanistan and High Commissioner to India, Aziz Ahmed Khan. From the Indian side, we have former National Security Advisor, former Foreign Secretary, and former High Commissioner to Pakistan, Jayashakar Menon, former Ambassador to Russia and Germany and High Commissioner to Pakistan, Sati Lamba, and former Ambassador to Burma and former High Commissioner to Australia and High Commissioner to Pakistan, G. Partha Sarthi. Ashraf Qazi, let me start with a simple question. How would you characterize the present state of India-Pakistan relations, starting with the 2 prime ministers meeting in Paris, the NSAs in Bangkok, the whole series of developments in December, culminating with Pathankot and Kulbhushan Yadav? Is the relationship inching forward, standing still, or sliding backwards?
Well, first of all, Karan, it's a great privilege to be on this forum in front of such an august audience. And secondly, I do want to thank Ambassador Sati Lamba and Ananta Aspen for arranging this wonderful get-together, which I hope will continue. It's been extremely useful. As for the relationship, unfortunately, the relationship is living in interesting times. It's never incident-free. And we've seen many an incident in recent months, both positive and then often followed by not so happy incidents. Right now, we are at a crossroads as to whether we can sort of move forward or whether we're going to go back to where we have been so many times. I do hope the relationship can get back on track. It's extremely important for us to be able to continue the dialogue, restore trust, and then begin to sort of take up issues on a substantive basis. We all know.
So can I interrupt and ask? Inching forward, standing still, sliding backwards?
Well, it could be all 3. I mean, inching forward is a possibility. Sliding backwards is very much on the cards. And what was the third?
Dancing on a pinhead is what it sounds like to me.
That might be the most accurate one.
Jayashakar Menon, at the moment, from the Indian point of view, the key issue is Pathankot, and in particular, Pakistan's response. Now, a JIT has visited India, 3 or 4 arrests have been made, and Masood Azhar is said to be in protective custody. As you view that, is it a good start or disappointing?
Well, speaking as an individual, it seems to me we've had mixed signals from Pakistan after Pathankot. Some good signs, some not so good signs. But there is potential to actually move forward if Pakistan does respond on some of these things. And I think it's too early to conclusively describe Pakistan's response to what happened in Pathankot as either positive or negative. We've seen some positive signs. We had the JIT come, and there are reports, as you said, of Masood Azhar being under house arrest. But let's see. I think I would still say that's an open question. But there's a broader question here. It's the question of terrorism, of the perpetrators of Mumbai and so on. So I think there is enough scope there for both sides to actually move forward if the will exists.
Very quickly on Masood Azhar, do you believe he's in protective custody, or do you have your doubts?
I have no idea. I mean, I haven't been in Pakistan for, what, 7 years.
So he could be. You give them the benefit of the doubt.
I haven't heard it officially from anybody. I know the media is saying so, and I know that
Sartaj Aziz said to me in February in an interview that he was.
Good. So maybe you know more than I do.
Yeah, Salman Bashir, from Pakistan's point of view, a key development is the arrest of Kulbhushan Yadav, who you believe is a spy. The Indian Foreign Secretary the other day made it crystal clear that India believes you've abducted him. Now, my question is this: does this potential problem have the capacity to become a serious thorn in the relationship, or conversely, are you actually surprised it hasn't become and escalated into a bigger problem?
I think this dialogue that is taking place, or at least the contacts between the 2 national security advisors, they have sort of, in a way, help to manage, the explosivity of such incidents, be it Pathankot or others. And I think as far as Kulbhushan Yadav is concerned, this needs to be sort of investigated, and I think both sides have to cooperate in this. In Pakistan, of course, there was a sense of Indian interference in internal affairs. This particular arrest sort of amplifies those concerns. But I believe it is important, to have more communication on incidents like this and to have mutual satisfaction.
But you began by suggesting that the contacts that the two NSAs are maintaining has ensured that this particular problem, which could have blown into a worse situation, has been capped and contained.
I'm not too sure whether this particular incident, that is the arrest of Kulbhushan Yadav, was taken up by the NSAs. I can't say it with certainty, but of course it does go a long way to substantiate what the Pakistani officials have been saying in the past of Indian interference. And not only interference, it is a bit more. It's not just a question of the spy, because the charges are that he was abetting acts of terror in Pakistan.
Mr. Parthasarathi, the MEA has accepted that Kulbhushan Yadav is A, an Indian citizen, and B, a former naval officer. How can you convince the Pakistanis he's not a spy who got unlucky and got caught? Because unfortunately, getting caught does sometimes happen to spies.
Look, frankly, I don't know whether he was a spy or not, but I refuse to believe that he was an employee of the Research and Analysis Wing. Firstly, Indians, when if they are spying, don't carry a passport to hand it over. Secondly, the fact of the matter is there is still doubt. We got differing accounts from Pakistan. Somebody say they caught him on the Afghan border. Third point, somebody else says they caught him on the Iran border. But I can say this: however bad our intelligence is, we aren't dumb. So I think the fact of the matter is that I'm not yet persuaded, because the guy is running a shipping company in Iran, and the Iranians have told us that there have been attempts to kidnap and take. The Iranians would know, and certainly the Iranian response to any Pakistan suggestion that their territory was used, President Rouhani came down pretty hard on it. So I don't accept, but at the same time, I think, as Salman says, let's talk it over. And that's the way forward. We'll talk it over. And, as they say, espionage is a very old profession. But if espionage turns into, if espionage is a cover for terrorism, and if terrorism takes place, that is a serious matter. Nobody has told us that he killed anybody. Or nobody, even the Pakistanis, are not charging. Well, to be
honest, on that video which India believes is doctored and manipulated, he does talk about himself being involved in what he calls terror activities and other anti-human activities.
I'm sure
but the Indian claim is it's a
I'm sure if there was a Pakistani in Indian custody, he would sing the same song.
Okay,
not necessarily the truth. It's well coercion, but I'm coming to a very basic fact. The fact is that he is not the Lashkar-e-Taiba massacring 156 people in Mumbai. He is not Dawood Ibrahim massacring 250 in Bombay again in 1993. And he is certainly not Jayashakar coming across to the Pathankot airport and killing people. Nothing like that has happened. That has not happened from the
Let me give our Pakistani friends a fair opportunity to counter what you said. Aziz Ahmed Khan was vigorously nodding his head, and I can't believe that's in agreement with you.
No, Aziz always agrees.
I always agree with him, because he coerces his way through every argument. But no, that aside, Pakistan has been talking about Indian interference in Balochistan since a very long time. The only thing was that we have not been able to get any substantive evidence. These were always circumstantial evidence that we had. Now, for the first time, we have a substantive evidence where a chap has been caught who says that he worked for RAW and that he was doing what he was doing in Balochistan.
Can I interrupt and ask you one thing? What do you make of the fact that he was using an Indian passport, something no sensible spy would ever do, and B, didn't seem to have a visa for your country, which if he had an Indian passport, he would certainly make sure he had the stamp often as well. So how do you answer that?
Why wouldn't he not use an Indian passport? It is a good alibi to say that, look, I strayed across, I was going somewhere on a chakor hunt or a pigeon hunt or something, and I crossed the border inadvertently. It can be a very good alibi. That is why I was carrying my passport. Otherwise, were I a spy, why would I use a passport?
So you have no doubt in your mind this is an Indian spy, and you've got evidence of Indian involvement in Baluchistan, which up till now you were claiming but you couldn't prove. Now you think you can prove it as well.
I dealt with the area a long time ago as Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and yes, we knew and we were talking about it, and we even took it up with with our neighbors about our suspicions and so on and so forth. So it's not a new game that has come up. It's an old story, except that we need to talk to each other and see how we resolve it.
Sati Lamba, it was against this background that the two foreign secretaries met in Delhi just about 2 or 3 days ago. The Indian Minister of State for Foreign Affairs described it simply as a mere courtesy call and sounded as if that was about all he was going to say. And then the Pakistan Foreign Secretary has gone on record to say there was no breakthrough. So do you believe that little discussion, actually lasted for 90 minutes, failed to crack the ice and it remains as hard and as intact as ever?
Well, judging by newspaper reports, it didn't appear to have taken us much further. But the very fact that they met is important, because till they met, there had been no contact since Pathankot at a higher level. So it's good that they had a meeting, and some strange things happened at the meeting, but even then, strange, I mean, I refer to the fact that while the meeting was 6 minutes on, there was a statement issued outside that Kashmir had been raised. So I was a little amazed that how, when the two foreign secretaries were inside, no contact with the people outside, how did the newspapers get the new information that what he had raised with him? So, but that apart, I think the very fact that they met was important and useful.
Very quickly, before I pursue that point further, I want to put this to you. One of the things I noticed was that Pakistan issued a statement which talked at great length about Kashmir. India issued a statement which didn't mention the word Kashmir at all. Now, as someone who handled Kashmir on the back channel between Musharraf and Manmohan Singh for several years, what do you make of the way Kashmir is being talked about and discussed today?
You know, in our meetings which we've just concluded, a very senior participant said that we shouldn't make ourselves a laughing stock at times. And this comic incident is one of those where a discussion is taking place inside. The reference to Kashmir was for about half a minute or 1 minute, and the press briefing was for over 10 minutes, later on for an hour. I think that doesn't show seriousness. If the matter has to be discussed...
Just to be clear, you're saying that the Pakistani handling of Kashmir doesn't show seriousness. It's the Pakistanis you're suggesting who were comic.
No, the people who were giving out the information. I said the incident looked comic after that. Don't put words in my mouth.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm simply decoding what you're saying a bit more politely. We've got at least 3 Pakistani former High Commissioners. Before I come to Ashraf Qazi, I'm going to go to someone who probably is going to be more competent. Was Pakistan, Salman Bashir, being comic? Was it out of turn to issue these statements 20 minutes into the talks when the talks still had 70 minutes more to run? That's what Sati is suggesting.
That's why they say these were informal contacts, these were not talks. So I think if it was comic in a sense, I believe, but I think if both sides are so concerned about how it's going to play out in the media, then you would have things like this happening. I think that's a very unfortunate situation.
And so this was, in a sense, grandstanding to ensure the right coverage so that you cover, forgive my colloquialism, your backside in your own country, which Indians do as well.
True.
Okay, let's come back to the way the two countries view each other, because in a sense that will shed light on the sort of relationship they have. There is a view in India, Ashraf Qazi, that the Pakistan army has successfully ensured that Narendra Modi's Lahore initiative has effectively run into the sand. First, there was the Pathankot attack, literally a week after the Lahore initiative. And then, just a couple of days before your JIT came to India, your army decided to announce the capture of Kulbhushan Yadav. And now, more recently, the Panama Papers have ended up weakening Nawaz Sharif considerably, whilst General Raheel Sharif's gesture of sacking 12 senior officers is given on the moral high ground. How do you respond to that view in India that it's your army that's the spoiler?
First of all, I mean, I just take up where Salman left off with regard to comic relief. You know, the relationship between India and Pakistan is tense enough that it can do with a little comic relief from time to time. But having said that, you know, we know very well what our brief is when we meet with India, and it includes Kashmir. So it might not have been too surprising for the High Commissioner to have anticipated, you know, from his knowledge, that this is one of the issues that they would be taking up, so even while they were talking. So it might be explicable there. As far as the relationship is concerned, I just lost the thread of
the question was to say that the Pakistan army has effectively
army, yes,
that our Prime Minister's initiative has run into the sand. First with Pathankot, and then by announcing Kulbhushan Yadav just 2 days before the JIT came.
But there's no doubt about it, our military, the world knows it, people in Pakistan know it, is an important institution, and this point of view does impact on policy. But whenever things go wrong, I think it might be overly simplistic to jump to the conclusion that it's the military which is behind it. There is a widespread sort of, you know, sentiment, both liberal and relatively hardline, towards India, because these derive from various narratives, you know. And one narrative being is that India has been unfriendly towards Pakistan right from the beginning, etc., and doesn't sort of take kindly to Pakistan sort of, you know, stabilizing and sort of developing its potential. That's one narrative, you know. And the other narrative is that it's absolutely essential for Pakistan to have a predictable working relationship with such an enormous neighbor, which is 7 times our size. How will we sort of be able to sort of get the foreign investment in order to transform our economy and society if we are in a constant state of confrontation or tension or conflict with such a big neighbor? So these narratives are there. It's not just the military. Even civil society subscribes to that. But we do have a civil military imbalance or problem which is talked about inside Pakistan as much as it is outside.
Let me pick that up and put this like this to you, Shivshankar Menon. Looking at the way things have developed since Christmas Day, when Mr. Modi surprised everyone by visiting Nawaz Sharif in Lahore, do you think that Lahore visit was an impetuous, mistaken gamble, or do you think it was a courageous risk?
I think it was worth trying, and I think, as I said earlier, today you have the opportunity of moving forward because of that visit. But there's no guarantee that you will. You mentioned all the negative things yourself, Pathankot, whatever, and the various things that have happened. So, for me, it's hard to say conclusively looking back that, oh, it didn't make sense to make the visit, or that, yes, the visit has borne fruit. No, not yet. But you know, India-Pakistan relations have been accident-prone for a long time. And we have gone through this cycle before. That doesn't mean you stop making the effort. You stop visiting, you stop talking, you stop dealing with the issues. And for me, it's important that we keep at it in our own interest. I'm not even saying that we're doing this because of the goodness of our heart or anything, but I do believe it's in our interest to actually keep making the effort. And the primary thing you need to do, experience teaches us, when we were relatively successful in 2003, 4, 5, was first we did the ceasefire. We ensured that there was peace and tranquility on the line, and we saw real action against terrorism in that period. And I think ultimately there is no escaping that. Unless we establish that, then we can think of building some kind of modus vivendi, the predictable sort of relationship where you can live with each other at least, even if you haven't solved everything.
Salman Bashir, how do you, when you look back over the last 2 years, view Prime Minister Modi's Pakistan policy? It began with the invitation to the swearing-in, followed by a U-turn and confusion over the High Commissioner's relationship with Hurriyat. Then there was the UFA initiative, which collapsed pretty quickly. Now there's the Paris initiative, which seems to have run into the sand. Taken all together, what does this tell you as a former High Commissioner to India of Mr. Modi's attitude in Pakistan policy?
Karan, I think one thing that strikes me is that, and I've been saying this even during our discussions here, and this morning to the previous Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, that what we need to do is to pick up where we left the last UPA administration. There is a lot of work that was done. It seems to us that all of this is sort of lost. You know, that file has been deleted. I hope it's not deleted and that it could be recovered. So what I'm trying to say here is that these 2 years of this present administration in Pakistan, we are at a loss to understand if there is really a Pakistan policy for India at this point in time. Because, for instance, Sati Lamba is here, and he was involved very deeply and very constructively in the back channel, as you mentioned, on the Kashmir thing. And of course, at that time, the High Commissioners and anybody visiting from Pakistan were in contact with the APHC. The assumption was that if at back channel there's something that would sort of take shape, then the APHC and the other Kashmiris would be, have to be included in some sort of conversations. So if you sort of suspend the Foreign Secretary talks just because the High Commissioner has met the APHC, would to me show that all that was done, years of effort on the back channel side, have been either lost or are not owned. I mean, that's the sort of thing which sort of gives us a little bit of unease, because we're not quite sure where this government wants to take the relations with Pakistan.
In fact, you said it very neatly. You said you aren't sure whether Prime Minister Modi has a Pakistan policy. Do you see what he's been doing as a series of contradictions and U-turns?
I mean, even on Pathankot and the GIT visit, our take in the last 2 days in Delhi is that the Indian administration is fully satisfied with the conversations that have taken place with the GIT, and especially with the NSA.
On what do you base that take? On what do you base that take?
I mean, our meetings here with very key people clearly indicated to us that they were more than satisfied with the sort of things that were going on relating to these controversial and these terrible things that have happened. So I think there is a point where we ought to sort of establish that it's not only the NSAs and these people who will run the thing, but also that you would allow the foreign secretaries to do their job, both sides. And I think the primary thing, Karan, here is, irrespective of the past years, now Pakistan-India relations are top-driven. It has always been the two prime ministers. Okay. And the two prime ministers need to have the capacity to steer their own systems in that direction.
How would you respond, Mr. Parthasarathi, to the point that you've heard from Salman Bashir, that he questions whether India actually has a Pakistan policy, that what he views is a series of contradictions and U-turns. He can't see any consistency, he can't see, perhaps I'm putting words in his mouth, any line of logic?
Let me put it this way, that there was continuity, in the sense that you invited Mr. Nawaz Sharif to come here. He came, but things got hot on the border. Salman has very rightly spoken of a period when there were no tensions on the border. You were able to discuss Jammu and Kashmir because the ceasefire was respected. There was no infiltration. You didn't have the Jaish-e-Mohammed sneaking into Pathankot. But that was a period when things moved, and all credit to my colleague Sati at the way the things moved ahead, including on Jammu and Kashmir, which I'm very proud of. But it was an era free of terrorism, free of infiltration. It worsened with the UPA. Let's make no doubt, Shankar Menon is here, that after Mumbai, Dr. Manmohan Singh had no political space to move. Let also be clear of one thing, that we function in a democratic system. Not the diplomats don't take the decisions, politicians do.
Can I just interrupt and say the question was actually about Mr. Modi's foreign policy?
Yes, that's what I'm coming to. Mr. Modi is functioning in an environment where public opinion in India, let's face it, I've never seen it, is so hostile. The fact of the matter is, public opinion has had enough of terrorism. He has to function in that environment. And I do believe that he has done the right thing. Keep India-Pakistan relations outside the media and outside the headlines. Let the NSAs meet. Let the foreign secretaries meet. let the Director General of Military Operations meet, and I go a step further and I say, if they are so concerned about Kulbhushan Yadav, let the Raw Chief meet his ISI counterpart. But as long as you keep this in publicity, in a public forum, you're going to have problems. The other thing is about, I think, Indian ability to absorb terrorism is, becoming very much more tense, and we can't take it. So let us therefore you had very good talks between the NSAs and foreign secretaries in Thailand. Let us keep it out of the distance from the current tapas of the world. Have it in places where you can talk seriously, free from the glare of media, and take things forward. Because I do believe that Mr. Modi's visit was a worthwhile initiative. But I also believe we must realize, and I hope my Pakistani friends will forgive me for saying this, but there is a dysfunctional setup. You have an army chief who's bossing over the prime minister to the extent that the Iranian president loses his shirt. No, we are dealing with that sort of dual power structure on that end, and therefore the best thing is you have an army guy who's their NSA, you have our NSA, you have the foreign secretaries, let the raw chiefs meet. And I have been urging that if you want to keep tensions on the border, the Directors General of Military Operations should meet separately. That is not happening.
I'm going to stop you there, because I think once again you said so much, it's only fair that our Pakistani friends should have a full and proper right
That's my forte.
It is indeed, and I want you for that very reason. You chabi lagao beautifully. The problem is, sometimes the lock doesn't open. Let's see whether Aziz Khan is prepared to open the lock. And I'm going to be fair to you, Aziz Khan, and I'm going to put two questions to you. First of all, do you wish to respond to the argument that yours is a dysfunctional system?
I don't see. There is a government functioning. There is the military in every system has a role to play as far as policy making is concerned. What that role is depends on the circumstances of that specific country.
You really are a diplomat, aren't you?
The specific
you beautifully explained the role the army plays without being offensive to your prime minister.
You keep saying that to me all the time, but the fact of the matter is that there is a system that is being followed and it is not without any intrusion into the functioning of the civilian government. Here also, you see where the military, when it comes to certain areas, the military does assert itself and play a role, and we have seen it in the past. If you wish, I can give you a specific example.
I should point out,
but I would not get into a slanging match here.
I should point out for the sake of the audience that before you became High Commissioner in India, you were also the principal spokesman of your foreign ministry, which explains the very glib way in which you can explain the situation.
I thought I was doing some plain talking.
And I applaud you for that. Let me come now to something else before I come to Sati Damba, and it was embedded in a sense in what you heard from Mr. Parthasarathi. Amidst the clouds on the horizon that inevitably we spend our time discussing, there is at least one silver lining. You heard Salman Bashir mention it, you've heard G. Parthasarathi mention it. It's the relationship the two NSAs have created amongst themselves, particularly through their secretive back-channel contacts. Do you believe that they've actually, through the tricky path of Pathankot and the tricky path of Kulbhushan Yadav, kept some stability in the relationship, or is that an exaggerated view?
The purpose of the national security advisors and also as the role of security agencies is concerned is to keep these sensitive issues, keep discussing these sensitive issues. And if they are discussing it, and I have no knowledge whether how frequently they are meeting and how much they are discussing that, but they should be discussing it. And this discussion, as far as NSAs are concerned, I think it should also be expanded to the security agencies of the countries. And along with that, I think there is also reason for the dialogue process to also get started, because as mention is being made, for example, about keeping it away from the glare of publicity, there are certain aspects that should remain in the glare of publicity. People should also know what is happening between the two countries. Yes, the exaggerated, breathless kind of reporting that the media normally indulges in should not be allowed, but at the same time, people have a right to know what is the state of relationship between the two countries, and they should be told that.
Gentlemen, let's come to the two prime ministers, because there's no doubt that they are the ones over the last 2 years who've been pushing in their own way to keep some sort of initiative going. First, I want to put to you, Mr. Lamba, Mr. Modi. The rhetoric that he used during the campaign that brought him to power suggested a very different Pakistan policy to the one that he's been implementing since May 2014. Would you accept that there's been a significant change in his attitude to Pakistan between the pre-2014 period and the post-2014? And if you do accept there's a change, what accounts for it?
Well, let me tell you that, yes, his pre-election speeches were completely different. But he did call me a day before he was taking over. And my meeting with him, he didn't say, but I got the impression that he wanted to take the relations further. Now, on that, I would like to, what Aziz was saying, that the dialogue must continue. I think for the dialogue to continue, there are a few things that are important. One, peace on the border and the line of control. Two, no cross-border terrorism. Three, an early satisfactory resolution of the Mumbai trial and completion of the Pathankot investigation. Four, guilty people, I'm saying guilty, whether they are state or non-state, should be punished, and thereafter we should discuss everything that concerns the other.
The other Prime Minister is, of course, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He came to power loudly and passionately committing himself to an improvement in relationship with India. 3 years have passed, and that really hasn't happened. What stopped him, or was that promise to improve relations just rhetoric and not serious?
No, I think Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is very serious in wanting to have a much improved relationship with India for a number of reasons. Number one, he's a businessman. He knows that India and the Indian market, as well as Indian imports, can provide a number of advantages to the Pakistan economy. You know, much of your stuff is cheaper than from the rest of the world. It's only because of transport reasons, and we could progress, if the political climate permits, into joint ventures, and then sort of, you know, have products which might have access to the Indian market on a preferred access basis, which would help in, let's say, maintaining a certain balance in the bilateral trade, because it's heavily tilted in favor of India, and that's always problematic. However, it is also true that after the Lahore summit, we had a dip in the relationship as a result of Kargil, and then after the Modi stopover in Lahore, once again Pathankot happened, and people do tend to suggest that that maybe he doesn't always have his hand on all the levers of the relationship, but he does seem to be quite constant in his drive to improve relations, even if he doesn't always succeed in doing so, or because of these complex reasons.
Salman Bashir, let's pick up on that thought. He being Nawaz Sharif, doesn't always have his hands on the levers. Writing in today's Hindu, Aisha Siddiqa, who's renowned as a military expert in your country, asks the question, and I'm quoting her, is Pakistan's military getting ready to take over the government for the 5th time? Do you believe your country is teetering on the brink of a possible coup?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Don't think so or don't hope so?
Don't think so and don't hope so, because I think there is so much freedom now, and everybody is having a say. The media is, you know, sort of projecting various points of views. I don't think it is possible, even if they wanted, to take over. Today's Pakistan is vastly different from what it was years ago.
So you're saying a coup in the present circumstances is impossible, even if the army chief wishes to do so?
Absolutely.
So you're also suggesting that the question Aisha Siddiqa asks is ipso facto ludicrous?
No, it's a question of, you know, even if it's not an army takeover or an army man who's the head of government, the question is who has more influence. I think if any cabinet has people who are mature, who are clear-headed, and if they are given the opportunity and they have more influence, that is all that matters. So I think in our case, of course, the army is a superb institution. They have delivered on security, and I think so therefore on national security issues and on external affairs, they make their inputs. That's it.
When you say make their inputs, do you mean call the shots?
No.
Inputs to the Prime Minister.
Let me ask you bluntly, Aziz Ahmed Khan, even if a coup is unlikely, Is General Sharif rather than Nawaz Sharif the real ruler of Pakistan?
So first, about Aisha Siddiqa's remark, I'd just like to say that in today's Pakistan, security analysts are allowed to have their flights of fancy. So they can say whatever they wish to say.
Oh, that reminds me of a lovely joke you told me when I first met you in Pakistan. You said in Pakistan, it's not freedom of expression that counts, it's freedom after expression.
Yes. Well, there is freedom after
that
expression.
Doesn't come to mind when you think of Aisha Siddiqa.
You see that today. I mean, you read the Pakistani press and all the analysis that appear in it. It is a totally free press and people are talking whatever they wish to talk. Now, as far as the coup question is concerned, I agree with Salman. I don't think there is any chance of a coup. The army's hands are full. They are busy and serious about handling a very serious threat to Pakistan's state, which is in the form of terrorism, particularly
But my question wasn't whether the army will carry out a coup. My question was, is General Sharif, Nawaz Sharif, the real ruler of your country?
Well, as I will just repeat what I said earlier, in my earlier remark, that army does put in their inputs in certain important security issues, but not more than that.
Can we get an Indian view on that rather odd question? Mr. Parthasarthi, yours is bound to be the most compassionate view. Does General Sharif rule or does Nawaz Sharif rule? And I know you'll be kind.
No, I think let's be real. Pakistan has had long periods of military rule, and the military has come to believe it has been ordained by God to decide on issues which it thinks is in the national interest. And foreign policy and security have certainly been a part of that. I agree that I don't think that there is going to be a coup. For a simple reason, why should there be a coup? General Rahil Sharif has powers with no responsibility, responsibilities with no power.
You know what power without responsibility equates to, and I shan't be rude enough to say so.
No, listen, I'm saying, I'm being serious on this one, because as Indians, we have to recognize this reality. And I lived through a coup, for God's sake. I say, the day the troops were storming into Nawaz's house and up the Pakistan television towers. So these things happen. You do have an army, but as I said, for the simple reason that the army, since it enjoys power with no responsibility, and I agree with Aisha that they'd be quite happy to see a change of government, and they do have the power to manipulate things to achieve that.
I'm coming to the end of this particular panel discussion. I want to ask one question of my Indian and Pakistani guests, and I'll start with you, Jayashakar Menon. As someone who's been National Security Advisor, Foreign Secretary and High Commissioner to Pakistan, if Mr. Modi were to come to you and say, Shankar, how do the two countries get out of the rut they seem to be stuck in? Would you say, ask Ajit Doval, or would you actually tell him?
Would I tell him? I'd tell him what I thought, of course.
And what would you think? Would you tell us too?
No, I would say exactly what Sati said, that we have a list of things to do, and you need to talk to whoever is running Pakistan. It's not for us to determine how much power the army has or how much the Prime Minister has, or to play Pakistani politics. We're interested in the outcomes. And we will deal with whoever it is, and we have always done so, and I don't see why we shouldn't do that in the future.
Ashok, if your Prime Minister were to come to you and say, you spent 5.5 years in India, you probably know the country better than most, what should I be doing to get us out of the rut? What would you say to Nawaz Sharif?
Well, we have a massive domestic agenda, and foreign policy is fundamentally tasked to bring about an environment and especially a neighborhood which is conducive to fulfilling that agenda. And that means developing a workable relationship with our most important neighbor, which is India, because 80% of our population sort of lives in proximity to the Indian border, and it's a relationship which is far from satisfactory. So we have to have a longer-term perspective. We have to address issues, and we have to address whatever the other side calls the core issue. If India says ABC is the core issue, and unless you address this to our satisfaction or almost, we are not going to go very far, and vice versa. If Pakistan says, XYZ is the core issue, and if you place a value on developing relations with Pakistan, then we must find ways of addressing that issue and making progress. But if we sort of, reject each other's points of view and talk past each other rather than with each other, then we might have the problems that we've seen for the past 50 years.
Very, very quickly, Sati Lamba, because we've got just about 30, 40 seconds, but do you accept that point that one of the problems is that we talk past each other? We want to talk about what we call our core issue and not their core issue, and they want to do the opposite. Is that the problem, that we don't give the other side the accommodation that we ought to?
I disagree with that, because I have discussed their core interest with them. So I think we are willing to discuss any issue that concerns the two countries. And if I have 2 seconds, my advice is engage, keeping in our interest in mind.
All right. A quick last word from you, Aziz Ahmed Khan. And
But I would just add one comment, because the reference is to the back channel. The back channel currently is dead.
Well, as far as
there's always hope of resurrection.
Can be, yes.
Remember, we're Hindus over here. We believe in multiple lives.
Yeah. The two countries have core issues. Both should sit across the table and very honestly and sincerely discuss each other's core concerns and issues and see how we can resolve them.
All right.
They need to be resolved.
On that note of sage advice, I come to the end of this particular panel discussion. My thanks to all 6 of you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. This has been a unique event. 3 former Pakistani High Commissioners to India, 3 former Indian High Commissioners to Pakistan, sitting together for the first time to talk about the relationship. And there we end this episode. Goodbye. Good night.
Bhumata Brigade's Tripti Desai, that's breaking news just coming in. She's been whisked away from Dargah Haji Ali. She wanted to enter the Dargah. She wasn't permitted to enter the Dargah. These are pictures of
India, and Shivan was excited about it. So yeah, here's Shivan with his review of the Huawei watch.
You make a smartwatch look like an analog watch, and you're sure to